emptiness is form. Form is not all but other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition, factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristics, unproduced, unceased, not efficient, nor fulfilled. Putra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition factors, no consciousness. Eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extension of ignorance is no including no aging and death and no extension of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell on perfection of wisdom, a mind without obscuration, without fear, having completely passed beyond error to reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the great knowledge, mantra that equal to unequal, the mantra that pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata gate gate bara gate para samgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, Saffama Safa, perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the fine perfection of wisdom, just as you've indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Wild One, having thus spoken, the Panabharisha Vadiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in the entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised as spoken by the Bhagavan. I prostrated the gathering of the guineas of the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space by the power of clairvoyance and magical emanations. Look after practitioners like her mother, a child. Akasamara Tashalara Samaraya Ben Akasamara. Is it me? I'm sorry. Akasamara Tasharam Samaraya Ben. Tata Om Gate Gate Para Sam Gate Bodhi Soha. But the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer and interests be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified, Shinto, Koni, and Soha. May all negative forces opposing Dhamma completely pacified, may the also of hectic thousand postcodes be pacified, may be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dhamma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dhamma, and may be the auspiciousness and perfect happiness here and right now. Sashi Puki Junshi Meto Tramli Ramlingshi Ni Degen Padi Sangye Shindu Mikte Uwa Ihidoku Namda Shin La Chupa Shoi Dang Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyataya.
Sangye
Cholan
Chedan
Togi
Tsoji
Chonan
Chonon
La
La
Chanchu
Chanchu
Bardu
Bardu
Dani
Dami
Kyabsun
Kyabsun Chi
Dagi
Dagi
Chushi
Chushi
Gibe
Gibe
Tonan
Chonon
Dola
Drola
Benshi
Benshi
Sangye
Sangye
Drupra
Drupara
Sho
Sho Sangye
Cholan
Chedan
Sogi
Tsoji Chonon
Chonan La
La
Chanchu
Chanchu Bardu
Bardu
Dami
Dani
Kyabsun
Kyabsun
Chi Dagi
Dagi
Chushi
Chushi
Gibe
Gibe
Chonon
Tonan
Gi Drola
Dola
Benshi
Benshi
Sangye
Sangye
Drupara
Drupra Sho
Sho Sangye
Cholan
Chedan
Togi
Tsojin Chonon
Chonan
La
La
Chanchu
Chanchu Bardu
Bardu
Dani
Dani
Kyabsun
Kyabsun Dagi
Dagi
Chushi
Chushi Gibe
Jibin Sonam
Tonan
Ji
Dola
Drolam Ben
Benshi
Sanjin
Sangye
Drupara
Drupra Sho
Sho Kangi Tuzi Ni Zoni Dawa Tamji Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Tenze Kodam Jela Chanze Lo. Good morning everyone.
Are you all right? All right. That's a good thing, I reckon. Yeah.
다 nganzu kazingi samde 지단 kazingi 마직 쉬인스로 당간zu 전죽 년섬 공송 시기여라스다 디난기다 전죽 레위게바 디차든도스 더 전죽 레위게베 난게 비기 다직 조 송사디 차바 독수 돌아야 가야 조디 차바 가출이야 송디 아니 차바 계사기 유 원진 치친 다 송바 볼헤 아니
시원라.
레베 시발라 아니 렌돈 좀바 아니 겔롱 쳔보 레베 시발라기 아니 송시기 유다 데는 좀바 아니 지 잡숑 아니 포이 덴세 바식 질야 뭐 송데 차그 여바디 안 세부 쇼즈레스 딘장한 디셈을 찍샤고야 찍라 가드이나 셈을 야고야 찍 아니 대한 송주디 다 차바 도주 송디게 아니 찍 차바승이디 유 칼데니 차바 끼거레스 라바이나 저단기 주더트로 레장알 덴비 차바 용구여러스 이나당한주 유기 찍 차바 치슈로디 룰라 미비 차바티 라 더 룰라 미비 차바디 차바비 땡징기 아니 지 간사기 차니 케바지 야지야다 용구도스 가스나 더 저단기 먼저지 비 로 아니 지 심징기 류기 차츠기 차니 류기 차니 아니 직 차바께서 율 만다 용되게 여버디 베스우레스 다직 링 가시고 아니 믹세도 차고를 마도 지 용기 아니 직 베나타 미왕도 제바네 깨바지나 차사디 분명률이야 만 차게 여버다 분명지네 끼빌률이야 망 차바기야디 코 아니 류 주당차니 용기 여버디 베스우로 와서
We're going to pick up from the point that we left off in the previous module. So we're looking at the 8th chapter from Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. The chapter is dealing with the way to develop meditative absorption. Now, particularly here, as we're looking at ways for cultivating calm abiding, of the main points that is made by Shantideva is the need to arrest attachment. So first of all, we said that in looking at Shantideva's presentation, we have to contextualize it. Shantideva was, first of all, he himself was someone that was a holder of the teachings of the Buddha, in that he was holder of the sutra sets, or the set of teachings. Also, he was a great Folio Den monk. The target audience for those teachings was by and large monastics, male monastics. So then when he speaks about the way to arrest attachment, he speaks about it in that particular context, him being a monastic, and also the target audience of this text was a target audience of monastics. So therefore, the explanation that is the explanation telling how to deal with attachment is particularly tailored to that situation. So we need then to keep in mind, as Geshe said before, we need to keep in mind the context of Shantideva's presentation. Now, when he explains the way to deal with attachment, he says that we said that in general, there are different things that we're attached to, particularly object of the senses, the five senses. So objects such as forms and smells and tastes and sounds and tactile sensations, we are attached to them. But here, of those different objects of the senses, particularly here, Shantideva addresses the great attachment that we have to the body. So of course, we have different types of attachments or different extents of attachments to different types of bodies. But particularly here, when we look at this general presentation that Shantideva gives, it speaks about, in general, the attachment that one would have to somebody else's body. And of course, as we are different to each other, we have different dispositions and different extents of attachment. It might be that there would be some variation in terms of the attachment that we have. So here we're facing, or we're dealing with a general presentation in which, to begin with, as human beings, we are, when we get attached to somebody else's body, we get attached to another human being's body. Also, when we look at different types of existence or different types of beings, then you could say that different beings have different forms of attachment to somebody else's body. But here we're dealing with attachment that a human being would have to the body of another human being. But also from the point of view of this general presentation, Shantideva says that in general, in society, you would have, if you're a man, you'll have an attachment to a female's body, or if you're a woman, you have an attachment to a male body. That's kind of just a general presentation of how you would have attachment to somebody else's body.
어디에 딘자 다른 딘자 갑dun기 니 단주시와 난신기 레베 시와라기 아니 다 랍숑 데라야 송디 주 데타치 피게 아니 치 게츠롱기 아니 치 dombe기 민두초 베나타치 마장 쩌발라 소바 안 두수 다 아니 주 송돔 체기 차기 여반자 아니 치 아니 강레 치 아니 가서 다치 냥가 사사기 로 간지 아니 다치 gelong 파에 데라야 치 아니 범맥 루디 야 차미리바 균센 쭈치니 송구도스 다 디송디게 치 아니 차베기 따출디 춤이 이제 남도 권을라니 아니 치 이온 출을 하바치 로 이동 출을 하바치 아니 도다가 치니 차바기 여바인자 아니 류 되게들야지 아니 드론도 메리바 아니 라히신 피기게 딱 가서 다치 아니 경기 차세나면도 지 미자위 차니 아니 저니 아니 차번 내가 그 차번 도출디 라 무두고 곰출 딱 간지 류 내가기 아니 미자위 차디 저니 마송디게 아니 간줄 내 담보에 깝깔야지 오 다디지 이게 개바지 체진 초리 소리 지도 삼성기 삼로지 콜 시기도 아서 당한주로 딘저 디자원이니 딘지 콜 바이나 안 자원이니 야부 매와인자 콜닝기 미소술이야 자원이니 야부 매와인자 안 디 벤데 정부 체진이 가을 송구도 술 송구도 깝 드디 가르치는 송구도 딥에 싸우는 내부 진 마다마이나 안 간주 디 아니 녜니 개바차기다 디바차기 하마고 차바나 뺏사기도 딘저 간주 다 생년의 녜년 참을로 빼 아니 간지 정부 가주 제연하면은 아니 정부 제지는 예시 지고야 돼 빼개 전부 통고도 쓰라
Shantideva here is speaking to a community of monastics. Even more so, is speaking to, you can say, fully ordained and novices, and is speaking to those who have taken ordination vow, which entails also to practice celibacy. So if this is one of the main points that one practices when they take ordination, conduct of celibacy, then Shantideva here addresses the things that could pose a danger to one's vow. So then is speaking of how unsuitable it is to develop desire to somebody else's body if you need to practice celibacy. So what happens often is that because of incorrect mental attention that we pay to somebody else's body, we superimpose attractiveness in their body, and thereby attachment to desire arises. So here, Shantideva is expressing the impure aspects of somebody else's body, in a sense that is speaking of meditation in which we think or contemplate about the unattractive aspects of somebody else's body in order to curb down, or in order to bring down attachment. So it is a temporary means of eroding attachment to express the impurity of the body that you desire. So here Shantideva is speaking again to a group of monastics, mainly male novices or fully ordained. So then when you approach this text to begin with, you might think that, I think that Shantideva's presentation here is involved with gender discrimination, with a sense of bias or partiality, which is not a good way to think of Shantideva's presentation, because if you think that Shantideva's here is being engaged in gender discrimination and so forth, you're not really contextualizing those teachings, to whom those teachings were given, who was the person that was given teaching, where they were given, in what environment those teachings were given. So if you don't make such distinctions, helping you to understand the context, then you're also not going to be able to distinguish between virtuous and non-virtuous approaches to understanding sets of teachings. And this is something that is valid not only to the audience that listens to such teachings, but also to someone that gives such teachings. So when you listen to teachings, or when you give them, and you want to be as honest or straightforward as much as you can with giving them, you also need to give them according to a particular context.
어디에 디자 갑갑이야 베나 간주 다치 갸와세드 집이게 엔 틀리디 틀리 다치 란주 츠 사샤자바디 지 페메그 남바친 간지 아니 지존 드메 남바친 츠페원디 엔 디기 틀린 주게체도 디 틀린 주게 야 데버표원디 엔 비 다치 페메그 류게 아니 제비차 인 겐강 여버디 로 레비차가 여버디 아니 제체니 데버피니 아니 챌린지에 탑시치기도 왔어 양 안주 샘기 리피기 강 차바 슈치즈 계사기 르 베메그 류차가 여바나 어디 미장위 초기 차칸 여버디 제체 두친 간지 아니 비기 갑다 뒤기 아니 탑시 땐다 만드고니 somba madawi tengoma ani chi nganzu keba poda mogi ani lulaya ani kaso zang mizangi rangshin keba pozang yo marwas ro temewa inza chigla teba da chigla meshawa tindi zawni ni mayimba ko kapdengi nyamlen chedangi rambajila tawni jargi yobadi ani jargi yobadi kotuwaina teni pe pendo yoris en sigdeba ka gyurgo chowaina pena kebi lus lab shawaina di pemeg lus lab shawaina di kebi lus lab pakha jarwaina chigba chigyang zura en ten sosu nyamlen chedan tagaran ro chawach and songdo asra
Buddhas, the victors, and their children, Bodhisattvas, display enlightened activities, sometimes taking a physical form of a deity, like, for example, Tara, a female deity. So in appearing as a female deity, we, in singing praises to Tara, then we express the beauty of the body of Tara. express the beauty of the ornaments of Tara and so forth. But then in another context, in order to vanquish attachment, we express the impure aspects of such a body. So it depends on the context and also the methods that you're using in order to develop certain aspect of your mind. The point here is that if you're a man or if you're a woman, there is no difference whatsoever in terms of the impurity of the body. It's not that if you're a man or if you're a woman, one type of body will be praised, whereas the other one is going to be criticized. There's no difference whatsoever between us in terms of the impurity of the body. So then if you're a man or a woman, if you're a lay practitioner or what have you, then you tailor Shantidev's explanation to your particular situation in order to reduce the attachment that you have to someone's body in thinking of the impure aspect of the body. So although here Shantideva in his presentation is explaining the way that a male monastic would think of another female's body, if you're attached to a male's body, you think of the impure aspects of a male's body. If you're attached to a female's body, to a woman's body, you're thinking of the impure aspects of a body of a female. So just work it out according to your situation.
나 다들이 다지당 아주 디 아니 계시무진 슈고야 견전 조 가르슬라바나 아주 직 송델이야 떼직 비길이야 직 마데버스로 깨바이나 라 직 까체치그릴이야 마데바 깨바는 디 남민기 녀바디 아니 첨부 슈지 차르고요 반자 빼 마스바 사우스치고요 춘풍구 레싱이 싸바이나 아니 빼 독자여바디 아니 도규 참에 나올래야 아니 지규르친 송샤고 차그도스라 춘풍구 레싸바이나 먼저 최 디디기 빼게 아직 쫀죽다보기 아니 오늘 단내기 냠nen기 숑다 유연하면은 숑 딘디질래야 테스틱 샘래야 수수기 고발렌당당 아니 상로 당당 그 돈이 숑 디기질래야 마데베소를 깨봐야나 아니 까와래야 아니 바차 독자 샤도야 로 아니 춘 딘디직 자원이니 직 퇴사매발래야 깨도야로 소비 아니 랭에버 참진 쇼시사도원자 빼 마스버 sabsab 치고야디 개침부 쇼레샤스 로.
It's an important point because if there's slight discomfort in listening or reading through a set of teachings, if you feel a sense of malaise, it will also bring about a certain fruition in the future. And if that sense of malaise or discomfort will also be involved with abandoning the Dhamma, it will become a serious negative action, considered both negative from a sutra perspective and also a mantra perspective. If you abandon the Dhamma involved with Shantideva's guide to Bodhisattva way of life, in terms of, for example, abandoning the meaning or your way of thinking about it, if you feel uncomfortable about it, if there's a sense of malaise that arises in your mind, it is a negative action that will bear a serious effect in the future, fruitional effect that will go from one lifetime to the next. And also it could result in serious negative situations in the future. So we really need to think about it like that.
데르데르 다카봉 안조기 사제디 투보 거기 여발라 차바 메리바세 룰라야 차바 메리바 라 르비다지 아니 그 메비 룰라야 차바 메리바 거다 집이 룰라야 차바 메리바 다 가리니 용쇼다 거기 여발라야 라 안조 까우까블라야 지 다카징이만 쉬여 까우까블라야 지 아니 둘로 드라만다기 겜바다 아니 지피기게 소단 드라만다 소온디기 아니 차바기기도 왔어 tirda ta di karten gorsna chakpa singi di zawani ni ngoyo netsulya ani shinjulo shudingi logic shichini yungu yobadi an daran guten gorsra.
With that in mind, let's go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off before the break. So we've been looking at the section that explains abandoning erroneous conceptions, first off in cultivating weariness of desire. Now, when we reflect upon the unclean nature of the body and so forth, we began with reflecting on the disadvantages by considering what one finds in cemeteries. Of the 6 points in that section, we've covered 5. Let's begin with this last point in the section that explains the silliness of being attached to the wearing of clothes. So you might be, sometimes you develop attachment to a body that is covered with clothing, and sometimes we develop attachment to a body that is without clothing. Sometimes when someone wears special clothes and special, adorn the body with special things, when they bling the body, we become attached to it. So Shandila, 그래서 돌로 도민다 코인에 하면 도민다 코인에 인치게 돌아간대 질라고래.
아래.
So anyway, attachment is an erroneous way of thinking that superimposes attractiveness onto the body, whether it is clothed or not clothed. So this is what this point is dealing with.
어디에 대자 간지 간도 스타다야 지 미기 지다 간지 차버기야 런 인지부 통해서 남문도 간지 차버기야 쳐도 아니 룰레야 드라마를 속고도 왔어. 디 갈던 것은 루 비기 랑신 통바이나 차버기가 매바티. 루 랑신 뭐만 통바이나 차버기가 매바티. 차버기서 유망인 바치.
So we do become attached or have a sense of desire to somebody else's body. Sometimes this attachment is incited by wearing all sorts of clothes or working the body in a certain fashion. But if you can see the nature of the body, attachment will not arise. If you see the nature of the body, it doesn't matter what presentation or what fashion you adopt on physical level, you will not become attached to the body. So this is evident, and when we look at verse 48, it says, you're attached to it even when it is covered. Why do you not desire it when it is uncovered? If you have no need for it, why do you embrace it when it is covered?
대마요나 찜문데 델라얀 되버 자고서 도저도 벌와 델라 거버면은스 그 역발에 최지실 큐 마장와 임바 총비체르스.
The commentary to verse 48 says, let's just make it slightly bigger. When the body that one is attached to, although it is being clothed, has been cast aside at the cemetery, why is one not attached now despite it being undressed? One should be attached also then. If one has no need for it when being cast aside at the cemetery, then why embrace the dressed body? They are the same in being impure.
류 코랑기 비기 따지 다랑 랑신도 샤바이나 거기 역마요 개바스 김에바 그 랑신도 샤바이나 아니 그 랑신기 따지 아니 도리 티마리 참아 중앙원디게 간조 비기 차바기 sable야 직 틀 레바이나야 간지 문제밖에 로 용도 왔어 다디 비기 아니 추추도 잡 아니 드라마도 주 두 시온디 아니 시니 비기 아니 차바기에 레고라스 다그 역바다 마요 이렇게 찍버도 저랬어 어 딘디신 반자 다그 란신 코랑이야 아니 즉 차바 기사가 율자원이니 매바질이야 아니 고코르되게 여바지 간지 소소 고코르되게 여바지 하고 와이나 아니 차바 도토야기 제와지 누가 쓰라
That is the nature of the body, whether it is clothed or not. So if you think of this nature of the body, the impure nature of the body, then regardless of whether it is adorned with clothes or not, when you just think of the complexion of the body, the smell of the body, you come to see that this is not something, this is not an object of desire. But still, often we cover the body in different things, either in clothes or perfumes and so forth. But still, when you think of the impure aspects of the body, you come to see that it is not an object of desire. So if you think about it like that, it can help you to put a stop to attachment. There is a hope for putting a stop to attachment if you think of the impure nature of the body.
대단 이번 선비스 철저하게 삼발았음스 메자왕 모습도 교회 차바 메릭 받은 딸링에버 녜베 차바 메릭 받 통상 대나 장말 셴바 가보 담보 메자왕 모습도 교회 차바 메릭 받은가 레젤 차바 메릭 봐 장월 또바 가봐 르손 소수 차비 내 마이 봐 녜바 대다 라나 전에 삼바다 이 차비 내 마이 보스
So we've looked at a section explaining reflecting on the disadvantages by considering what one finds in cemetery. Then we think of the aspects of those who are still alive. This section has 3 main points. Attachment is seen to be unreasonable once the lack of cleanliness becomes apparent. Then by ascertaining the characteristics of the sexual organs, attachment is seen to be unreasonable. And thirdly, thus arrest is grasping at the body and things as being clean. Let's begin with the point that explains attachment is seen to be unreasonable once the lack of cleanliness becomes apparent. There are 5 main points to this section. The unreasonableness of being attached to physical sensations, arresting the conception of things as clean. Individually, the body and the mind are nothing to be attached to. Point D is reflecting on those faults in relation to oneself. And finally, physical appearance is nothing to be attached to.
Retambo da rejala chava merigba rejala chava merigbanes sen chibu nyilene shangdan kanchu chongyurna tele shangla magashi kanchu la chi shirgasa.
Let's begin with verse 49 that says that it is unsuitable to become attached to tactile objects. So it says, if both excrement and saliva arise solely from food, why do you dislike excrement and find joy in saliva?
There's a director Devina Sevudo that Jerry test Kagiwana Tambo Nanzu Pena Kibi Kachula Gaoshina Niki Gu Sen Chibu Nilini Jebu Shanjin da Kanju Ninjo and Yuna Telish Shangla Magashi Kanjula Chuchisha Gumazami John dan Jebu Mazami but Zombie Shares Piggy 6 days to Kagiwana Tanda Chibachi Yan Chagados or the Nidros.
Looking at the commentary to verse 49, we're gonna make a slight change to the reading. So as we said, Shantideva here is speaking to a community of male monastics. So we're going to change this commentary in saying that someone says, I like the saliva for men. The answer is saliva as well as excrement and urine arise from the same very cause of food. Why do you prefer the saliva and dislike the excrement? They're the same in arising from an impure cause and in being impure result.
Symbol renan jambata nga la gawar mecheba tangan zaba mainshi 도덴 자와라 몽스.
And this point continues in verse 50 that says, cotton too is soft to the touch, but while you find no delight in a pillow, you think it does not smell. Lustful ones, you're confused as to what is unclean.
제 디말로사이다 츠디 피 gyurgin jan digda ta jema chip chikya resro nganzu min tsamado symbol renan jamba ngela ya and chi kebi rejetar gaw majeba kebi lula ani za shendus kanji ani chengemba ani chi ani tsogba yongya tsamalo ani kephumu tsam chikpa chikya inza she dode mazawla tsawr mone chaba 가진 책이 있어야 돼.
It says the desires are deluded regarding the impure and thus act with attachment. So we'll continue with reading through those verses. Geshe says that they might make points that are similarly different, but are still getting at the same point. So the desires are deluded regarding the impure and thus act with attachment. They discriminate between the cotton cushion that is soft to the touch and the feel of a woman, saying it does not possess the bed smell that one finds in the body of a woman. Or as we said, Geshe said, we can turn it around in saying that, and the feel of a man, saying that it does not possess the bed smell that one finds in the body of a man.
도된 깨우는 몸반노 심벌라라는 잠바 델라 냐고 제 미니시 심벌 델라 초바다도 제바 아니 신줄로도 셴번 바시 임베 레젤라 차보 미릭소스.
So then the next verse says, thinking I cannot copulate with this cotton, although it is soft to the touch, confused, negative and lustful people become angry towards it. So then the commentary to this verse says, the corrupt, desirous people say that although the cotton is soft when touched, one cannot have intercourse with the cotton and become angry with it. Hence, they intensely grasp only that which is distorted. It is unsuitable to be attached to objects of touch.
That's our tobakawa. Nanzu ludi ra dugdengi ludi kanji ani dugdengi ludi mizangwi ranshinji remado and telaya and zangwi chachik ta yomares ra nanzu ludi ta mizangwi ranshin imbadi ta sebu shojire kanji kan zawad jiloda kade mazang chamena Rusib gibi devala shayin damgi shajil che jenkyo chikshe pandu chuks.
So this is the nature of a body of true suffering. It is an impure nature of a body that is true suffering. So in relation to that, when we look at the next point in the outline, it says, arresting the conception of things as clean. Now, it says in verse 52, if you have no attachment to the unclean, then why do you copulate with another which is a cage of bone tied together with muscles, plastered over the mud of flesh, plastered over with the mud of flesh?
Reda mezamigi ranshen samzalaya mezamigi pigi dachi chunkor tawchik ani sungudas mezami chunkor da mezamwa soyagi ani chuja tawchik 라 간지 데네마 태용야 참을 르네마 태용야 참을로 참이란시 제문도 하세요. 맞아 따지 비기 따지 진짜 그 죄비기 아니 차 추설 나라서 봐 가르 템바이나야 간지 참이란신지 자원이니 요마라스디 직 빠빠빠빠 지기 아니 까버자마도 아니 텔리파 아니 게는 나로라 질레온디기 에 간지 참이 차지 아니 종세게 녀 매바인자 간지 매장이 깨박 소리를 들려야 아니 가르치니 배 아니 차니 죽은 담고 요새 소리지 로 딘디스
If you think of the body, it is an unclean machinery. It's an unclean device in that sense. So there's nothing that you can find to be clean within the body when you investigate what's found inside. So when we think of the blood and pus and the things that run through the guts and so forth, there's nothing in them that is clean, that is pure. They are plastered or wrapped together with a thin veneer of skin. But when you think of what's found under the skin, the blood and pus and so forth, there's nothing that is clean within those substances. And yet we don't think about it. We develop desire and we wish to embrace or to copulate with those things that are just wrapped with a thin layer of skin. This is unreasonable.
Karde mazamala chaba medo shena rubigi sep gubigi trabe devala shayin damji shashe cheba Pamezananda keba sananda ani kebala kyuchishir pantchus pamela kyuchishir pantchus ra ten merik sos kanji sem chabi wangi kanji sem trubi wangi droyadi ani merik wares ra sem trubi wandi ani lusubu mani bi wandu sombayna and di tobgi ani chawashinju lojlaya chawa nongtruk shodreji mado ani chawayanta kanji chetuk maras chawayanta chematuna di chumje yanta yunguyo maras ta kanji ani le gedik senamas dindich ton drogudo asra.
The commentary to this section says, if you say, I have no attachment for the impure, then why do you embrace the myths of women or men who are but a bond cage bound by a net, sinews, and given a face with the mud of flesh? It is unsuitable. So we do develop desire to somebody else's body, like for example, to a woman's body or a man's body. And it is done with a mind that is in error. And when the mind is erroneous with its operation, the actions that we take on that basis also become distorted. And when our actions become distorted, they do not bring the result that we seek. We do not get wholesome result from actions which are distorted. That aligns with the presentation of karma, actions, and the results.
Direda ketsi mazangwa ra mazangwa rangshen res ketsi zangwa jingbayna tanju shibana je ngone gi pigi chik yan takba zangma yakbu shuji yobayna and dela ya sobji gyagoya mandas ra and dela ya jing drama de yogoya drama de chugoya sobdan drama de sogoya gyunsen zawni ni yomarsa korangi rangshen tembayna and mekanga yiwan chogra sra te mebayin zanganzu dusma chik ene chik mimangbu kile chik zombayna Gacha gubchu kogu be ani susu lideleya sobda sön damada chukji damada yochine yonyaji madobe pigi lug ranshin koran ten matuya di günse taran tu oras ta ko mazang ranshin kolya chik ani yakbuchi mebainza ta be kap yok ani damada chugo oras ro odu siondigi du somdawayna an chik lulaya chik chaksi ne meba di gacha gatamba ani 통투고res 이내당 아주 마리비 드브신 아니 마리비 드브시 아니 비기 추미지 남도 숙치다비 왕기 아니 차바기 아니 차비 왕기 차원다면데 아니 디 왕기 트루버쇼 콘트로스 안다면데 시대야디 디렌도스로
Such is the impure nature of the body. Now, had it been otherwise, that the body would be clean by nature, it would be perfect by nature, there would be no need for us to hide it, to dress it, to adorn it, to wear perfume and so forth. There would be no need for all those things had the body been perfect. But when we find ourselves in the midst of other people, then we do wear different clothing. We try to shape a body to a certain figure. We adorn different things, either jewelry, perfumes, and so forth, which means that we do not display the nature of the body. we do not show others the nature of a body. We try to come up with something else as for the nature of the body. So if we think about it, it's clearly indicative, 100% indicative that we do have attachment and desire to the body. And when we look at this mechanism, we come to see that because of ignorance, an improper mental attention arises. And because of that impure mental attention, attachment arises. We take actions on that basis. We end up quarreling and fighting with each other, and other unwanted states arise because of this process, which is involved with attachment. Continuing in this vein, you yourself have many unclean things that you constantly have to utilize. Out of obsession for the unclean, also in other bags of filth, why do you desire it?
rangi luji matsumba keba shenju lula chi sher debache miriksos ro phame shenju lula chi sher debache miriksos oro.
The commentary to verse 53 says, further, your very body, which possesses many impurities, you utilize continuously, and you also crave and are thirsty for the impurity of other impure bags. If you are not satisfied with your own body, then why do you desire the body of a woman or a man? It is unsuitable.
Dirida o dirida kanji ani kongro dan chakpa singi digi manzula ya chik lega töbe chite deji madobi tempen dembi tanda yebi ani lega chik ta cheang kango chigdo asa kanjiro da chakpa mebayina chaksam di mebayina ani chik mizangwigi ani kyawa jila ya mizangwigi kyawa chik ta jar marwas ro o diniro kanji and di kanji chaksam rang tone ro nontu ganga chaksam tone kerana chaksam mebayina ani kawad debayina ya ro kawad debayina ya kerana nontu shog mares ro chaksam yobayina ani nontu shog ro ya tingudo as kanji di zo karka wasni ani lu mazang yimba ni drubsha zo di lu mazang yimba druya de mare lu yabu yimba druya de mare phame lu dugja yimba druya kebi lu yabu yimba druya diniki mares zo di gyug chaban goyak che sungyor was ro.
With anger and attachment, the only thing that you get is extra work. And anger attachment also prevent you from engaging with what is meaningful. Without attachment, we will not be infatuated at all with what is unclean, what is impure. Without attachment, we will make no mistakes whatsoever. Mistakes arise because of attachment. So here, when we think of this argumentation that is put forward by Shantideva, it's not that we want to develop a certain attitude in which we see, for example, the body of men as pure, whereas the body of a woman is impure, or vice versa. The body of a woman is pure and the body of men is impure. It's not that this is the type of attitude that we wish to develop. The attitude that we wish to develop here is the recognition of the faults of attachment. That attachment is an unsuitable state of mind.
That's somebody listen so chakbit ne mayibanes ra chakbachesa ne bigi chakbachesa yul mayibanes dan shant lagashe redan tawar denako seme baye ranshingi shan kyogu chimendes.
The next point in the commentary is, individually, the body and mind are nothing to be attached to. This section covers 2 verses, beginning with verse 54. And it reads, I delight in this flesh. if this is what you wish to touch and behold, why do you not desire flesh in its natural state, devoid of mind?
Dan devenase dan symbol gi rejal mugawi shengi lugi shandela gashi rebata tawarun de na kon de na nis semi bi ranshingi shivishani kyo koji munde debar chagona teder mejebi lula chagba mirik sos.
You say in the commentary, you say, I do not like contact with cotton, but I do like the feel of the body of another. Shantideva answers this position in saying, if you desire contact with and to look upon the body of another, then why do you not desire the flesh of an inanimate dead body? You should like it, but as you do not, it is unsuitable to be attached to the body.
Devi semgan imbadi redan tawa munila kanshik nu de shebamen demin kyu de chishikchas.
And in verse 55, it says, any mind that you may desire cannot be touched or beheld, and whatever you are able to touch will not be conscious. Will not be consciousness. What is the use of embracing the meaningless?
Odirda di leng sorojere dasra nga pigi pigi chik shala chagames lula chagames nga pigi chik ngalaya tsu zewi gi ani sesam delaya chaguyos labana ani tia ani tongyu regyu kanya meba chilaya ani kandrasni ani karjini pigi gi ani lulaya chaguyos semlaya chaguyos ra.
So I'm thinking of this dialogue that Shantideva presents here. It says, it is unsuitable to become attached to the body because of the impure nature of the body and so forth. Then the person will reply and say that it's not that I'm simply attached to the body. I'm actually, when I think of what I like in that person, is their mind. Then Shantideva says, if you desire the mind of that person, well, you cannot really touch the mind of another person. You cannot embrace the mind of another person. So also, it doesn't make sense to become attached to them, to desire them because of their mind.
Ta shiba niba de rangla jarni sambanis ra ta shengi lula ya ani chik chakpa doya gi chedu ani shengi lu mizamwe rangshin pigila ya juni ani chakpa dosu songba tsamgu mendigba ani nganzu semla ya rangi lula chakpa joras tiyan ani tiyan dogo yo kanji chakpa ri kanda jimba yana ya torjam bashi gimba dogoyam bashi gimba chagwanza rangi lula mi chakpa tiyan dogo res tinza shengi lula ya chakpi ne mayimba imba nashingi rangi luya ani tedardi tongo res ra tedardi samgo res.
Let's just read through the commentary to this section. It says, I'm attached to the mind of others, you might say. And the answer, you cannot touch or look at the mind you desire, and that which you can touch is not mind. Therefore, what good is to embrace the meaningless body and to be attached to it? As it is not good for anything, it is unsuitable to be attached. So then, looking at the next section in the text, it says, reflecting on those faults in relation to oneself. So far we spoke about how unreasonable it is to desire the body of another person due to the impure or unclean nature of their body. Just as well, Shantideva says here that you can point those faults at your own body. So attachment is not a suitable state of mind. Whether it is applied to yourself or whether it is applied to others, it is the same in being an unsuitable thing to be attached to. So here, when we address the desire or the attachment that we have to our own body, Shantideva says here that just as well, when you think of the nature of your own body, it is unsuitable to be attached to it.
Mezan rangshin jengulu mdong otsar mechi rangi mezan nye imba 또 보면 ngotser chis.
It says in verse 56, it is not so strange that you do not realize the bodies of others to be of an unclean nature, but it is indeed strange that you do not realize you yourself to be just unclean.
There's a yakshu the teaching saresro big chagba dotsu lula migbi chagba dotsu and someone the so the sosu lula ya sosu ludi chik mizamwe rangshin kari imba di sosu ta big ngonsum di big ta nyongwe tupse di tichagorasro tinza di ani shenk lu mizamwe rangshin imba di kerangi matobadaya shuji yamtsengoya kimandus kerangi be ngosum de tonde kerang kadune kerang zan jardi ludi kerangi mezan ranshin tomaduade be yamtsenbo redoch.
So in overcoming attachment to the body, Shantideva says, look at your own body, because the nature of your own body is not hidden or obscured to you. It is something that you can see directly. So there is nothing, you could say, amazing in being obscured with respect to the unclean nature of somebody else's body. But if you're obscured with respect to the unclean nature of your own body, it's shocking. The impure nature of our own body is not hidden to us. It is evident. It is directly seen. And this is the point that Shantideva is making here. That one does not realize the impure nature of the body of others is not very surprising. But that one does not realize the impure nature of one's own body that continually disintegrates into something impure, this is indeed surprising. This is an ironic statement. Once one understands the impure, it becomes unsuitable to be attached.
Soda chakbi ne mayimbanes tender ninse kichibi pema shonlu panene mazan shembi semgine mazan sevla chishirgas.
Now looking at the last point in this section, physical appearance is nothing to be attached to. So it says in verse 57, having forsaken the young lotus flower, unfolded by beams of sunlight free from cloud, why would a mind adhering to the unclean do take joy in the cage of filth?
Then devil lost it. Tenda tevi nisir gichibi pema shonlu la teda sana tepani ni mazan wala shembi semgi mazan with sevla chishirga gawa mirigbi yibla yan chaba mirig sos.
The commentary says, if the pure fresh lotus with petals unfolded by the clear sunlight, unobstructed by clouds, has all these qualities, then why reject it and take joy in the impure cage due to the grasping for the impure? Since it is unsuitable to like it, it is also unsuitable to be attached to its shape.
Tali ngebar chaba merigba bigi ta gyunsen la deni ra nganzu gyunsen namda la deni ani chaba merigba ta tongo gres ra she mezang jonkong imbe mazangwa imba sambata ti debu imbe mazang debu imbe mazangwa imba sambata lu mazangwa pe tembata.
Then the next point in the section that explains the reflection on aspects of those who are still alive is ascertaining the characteristics of the sexual organs, and therefore attachment is seen to be unreasonable. So when you think of these valid reasonings that are presented here, through ascertaining the characteristics of the sexual organs or one's characteristics, you can come to see that attachment is not a suitable state of mind. Now, there are 4 points to this section. Reflecting on the lack of cleanliness in light of the fact that there are the point in which unclean things exit the body. Then reflecting on the lack of cleanliness in light of the fact that they are the effect of those. Then illustrating the body's lack of cleanliness by means of an example. And finally, reflecting on the lack of cleanliness of one's own body.
Terda mazang jongkong yimba yimbe mazang samba ra mazang jongkong yimbe mazang samba sabsho mazang ki khoba kade reber mundenas kan le ten jongyi lula cheder kyorendes.
Let's begin with point A, which reads, reflecting on the lack of cleanliness in light of the fact that they are the point at which unclean things exit the body in verse 58, which reads, since you do not desire to touch a place that is sullied by filth, then why do you desire to touch the body from which that arose?
Terdadi jaya sabjo mazang nganju sok taki kobala kade reber mundenas lu kan le mazang watin jongyi lula cheder kyo reban de deba merisos.
The commentary says if one does not desire contact with a place that has been touched by something impure, such as filth or vomit, then why does one desire contact with a body from which the impurity came? It is unsuitable.
Lelau pendosra lelau yo lelau do samne sha mashawa titola yan yang de samlo tangwa di pe kisham yesares ro dele ya nembuchin sonde di lelau jimba na nembuchi sonde di la ya nengaji yores ro this was yan de chiksamba na semle ya ngebating ni nyonchik ro pe o re sam sha sha mayum semle ngebating ni nyewa chawa na and digi and sem giwatang to yati yungu yorosra.
The section is clear and you could say that it's easy. But don't just leave it like that, saying that, oh, no, I got it, this is easy. We need to think it again and again to the point in which it affects our mind. We need to, here Shantideva is speaking in a very poignant way, in a very sharp way. But rather than to think that, yeah, I got it, I got it, we need to think about it repeatedly again and again till we develop certainty in our own mind in order to put a stop to attachment. So then following that in verse 59, that comes under the heading of contemplating that it is impure because of being the result of the impure. It says, if you do not have attachment for the impure, why do you desire to copulate with others coming from the impure field generated by its impure seed?
Kade mazang la chaba mena mazang wi shin mai ngale jon gyujin ngal di saben phami khoda di kibi lu shin kyola chi she pandu kyujin chaba chi meri sos.
If one does not have attachment for the impure, then why do you desire to copulate with the body of others that came from the impure field of the mother's womb, generated by the impure seed of the father's semen and the mother's blood? It is unsuitable to be attached.
Da lu mazang be temba. Lu mazang be temba nis. Mazang lejon mazang sin pe da chinjong ro. Chung ke de michela. Mazang mambu ranshin lu mazang kyawa mazang la mazang kebo de barche. kyonranye mzangla hme cheba masegi mzang kyawa mzangla kambi shenyan dobache kambi shenyan dobache.
So having looked at the reflection of the lack of cleanliness in light of the fact that there are the effects of those, we're going to look at an illustration illustrating the body's lack of cleanliness by means of an example or analogies. So there are two verses that this section covers, 60 and 61. They say, you have no desire for a small dirty maggot which has come from filth. Why do you desire the body which is the nature of many impurities and also produced from filth? Not only do you not disparage the uncleanliness of you yourself, but out of obsession for unclean bags of filth, you desire others as well.
Terdadi deolosan biz jen kyo mzang le chong yegi mzang wi simbu chong la kyo deba mechela kansin chunjun ji ma da dan tonggo maris mzang mambu gi ranshin gi lu mzang wi ze sum ju zadu gi ranjen le ke ba chedar deba che kyo ne rangi mzang la deba mecheba masiki mzang wi kyawi mzang la kambe mzang wi phumbo shen deba cheba deni miriksos.
Further, the commentary says, you do not like even a small dirty insect that was born from filth, not even that slight small thing. Now here, by the way, when the text uses the word filth, it implies excrement and so forth. So you do not like even a small dirty insect that was born from filth. How can you desire the body that is in the nature of many impurities and was generated from the 36 impure substances? Not only do you not disparage your own impure object, you desire the impure bags that are the aggregates of others out of a thirst for the impure. This is unsuitable. Michelle? Yeah. Being. Yeah. All right. So then you say that in struggling with to understand this section, when we think of, for example, Isona Dalai Lama's body coming from the copulation of his parents, so we regard Isona Dalai Lama as being pure, pure being, a great being, but still it came from his body came from the copulation of his parents that also was involved with desire. I mean, without desire, people would not do it, or his parents would not have done that. So how then do we understand that such, you could say, a great being, pure being like his honest Dalai Lama came from something that here is seemed to be indicating that is impure? Yeah. Dila sama tama inarwa pena gyaren bochegi kuzo dian kona yabyumne jumbarwa ani Cuba latene jumbarwa ani gyaren bochegi yabyumgi chepanayandi Cuba dian chaba latene peji jun yosarwa 제가 만초 gyaren boche kebu tambares 아니 고소디안 근데 루 시마라 고소라게르와 네 고소디안 나서 페셰 두셰라 짬바 임발라얀 페셰 미차와에 넬레 줌바르와 차발레 차바탄 제와레 줌바르와 제선디 칸데치나스
다디 난주 따지 난추기 고팅 사보치 난추기 장바팅 사보치 메바이나 앙이디게 데시디 캐날레 코데부로 쉬어 카부레샤스 라
Actually, here it goes into a very deep and profound point within the Buddhist tradition. Without kind of looking at this deep and profound point, it is difficult to explain it or to make it clear how, what is the case, for example, with his honest Dalai Lama.
간스나 야오르무치 구수 슬라운디 야오르무치 꾸디 nganzu thong deya gi tetsam gi yawarumji ku kulu di tetsam gi zobarewe tele laga ji yomarewe slavaina timares yachi yatam yores ta ro nganzu thong dewa dagarang gi zobaina chibuchi kya nganzu thong deya di nganzu lu nanshin ji nganzu thonggur mado nganzu lu le laga bi kusu di nganzu jegi yomares.
It does become a very subtle and profound point, a deep point, because then when we start to contemplate the body of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and wonder, is what we see, is the finality of the reality of his body? Is what we see exactly the way that it is? Is there no other body or other meaning to this body that is different to what we just see? Had it been the case that what we see when we see His Holiness's body is the finality of His Holiness's body, you could say that, well, his body is just as unclean as our body. That would be the case if it is indeed that whatever we see is the summation or the completion of everything that there is.
야오르무치 간조다 자원인 자기요 말이 띵간조 켈랭기요리 자기요 말이 만라디 야오르무치 아니 간조 지금 잠블린디 깨와 셰디야 라왕 또기 아니 그 깨와 셰바 자기요 마도 간조 나신기 라왕 메바 비게 지 레다 뉴무 또기 깨샤와치 자고 말다 라왕 또기 깨온디 간조 그 텐데 잠블린데라 페바디 차고연자 nganchu tend pebala nganchu 통토야지기 루지 랭고로스 nganchu 통토야 루디 나란소리 여비 샤타기 주숨 그 규치비 루지기 수지 마시바이나 nganchu 제토메바자 딘디 셰여 딘디 루디 다가라 nganchu기 아니 겨울무지기 야위엄기 비기게 오니 코달리 트비기 꾸수 셰여 딘 nganchu가 직발에서 나나 내가 요 말했어 라
So we say that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is special. It is unlike us. We say that and we also accept that, at least in this tradition. So the way that we think of His Holiness, or our attitude, a way of thinking with respect to him, is that he took a rebirth in his mechanism, in a process that is different, unlike the process by which we took a birth. So His Holiness, being a being of compassion, has taken rebirth in being free from karma and afflictions, which means that it is not an uncontrolled birth. It was a controlled birth, or a birth that His Holiness took by choice. Now, we have no control over that process. We have no control of the mechanism that is controlled by karma and afflictions. Now, since His Holiness has taken such a rebirth by choice, or such a body by choice, not being controlled by karma and afflictions, the way for him to take a rebirth with a certain body is to be born in a body that we can see, that we can relate to. Otherwise, had it been a birth with a body that we cannot see or that we cannot relate to, then His Holiness would not have been able to relate to us, to teach us, and so forth in a way that is suited to us. So His Holiness, you could say, appears to us, let's say, when you look at this ordinary level, being born from the coming together of his father's sperm and his mother's egg or ovum, being born into a body that seems to be similar to our body, as being an impure body.
시기 십자디 카부로 저래도 하더라. 마도 간주 제대야기 간주 통대야기 야오르무지 구주되다. 야오르무지 구주 빨아래야 개바유스. 야오르무지 구주디 장신 이동와 배 비기겠다. 제 배는 총이 쪽도 조샤비 구주들에서 야오르무지 구주 간주 통대야기 구주디 아니 야오르무지 야비움 기피 아니 쿠탈리티 구주레스. Tingi kewa yus, tindi logo go dosta. Ro, tindi chago is jida. Logo the same one. Tindi chago is.
So then when we address it using the linguistic, let's say linguistic distinction that we make with respect to his honest teaching, it becomes a little bit complicated in that if you are not used to making such distinctions, it might sound a bit awkward. So, but still, when we address it, at least in Buddhist language or Buddhist way of expressing it, we express it in this way. So the body that we see, what we see, the body that we see is honest's body that we see is not necessarily the body of His Honest or the only body of His Honest the Dalai Lama. So the body that we see and the actual body, which is a consummation of the two accumulations, giving rise to a body that is clean and attractive, is not the body, the body that we see is not the body that came from the completion of the two accumulations, giving rise to a body that is clean, a body that is attractive. We don't see that body, but what we do see is what we can relate to in our current situation. What we see is a body that came from sperm and ovum, that came from his father and mother. But this is not the actual body of His Holiness. Or you could say that this is not the main body of His Holiness. Thank you. So it's complicated, isn't it?
Kali ganzura kali kerangi mintuni jambaina. Manzatanda chonju jengo yore tatini yachin. Tato on the kanji donga nigi chut chik janto bana. Then only gipigi Nengaro the shingres ro. Tishivan the only chik tabakieda. Tachiora, the only yungudus, the Tinganyam roch. Yes, Lana Digris ro.
It's complicated, isn't it? But then if you just take it easy, give yourself the time to not only study Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, but if you continue to study, and we will look at topics that come from the Sutra side and then from the Tantric side, and through that our understanding will become more and more subtle and more profound, then Geshe feels that you'll be able then to relate better to the answer that Geshe gave. You know, this will start to make some sense, to have a greater meaning. So another question is, here we speak a lot about how we see the unclean nature or impure nature of the body. Can it be taken to the point in which we develop aversion to it? Yeah. Dila lumi tangwa shiu chi shigirwa. Chezandi lo mi tangwa di samlo mamu chi tangwa ina. Ani chawado ba pasha. Di sokola magawa shedan kondun dindo chi kia sigirves.
The some down piggy, Yavuchi Machana, young Kisigros, any Tanda Chichinakara, any cousin touching Nanjin Yangi, and his beds the Savage Chayo Sigros. Tichidi tending Karan Samley and Gandu Yungure, Karan Samley, Madeva Yon Sigres.
Yeah, it is possible that if you don't think about it rightly or in the right manner, something like that could occur, that, you know, that rather than just overcoming attachment, then you're going to the extent in which you develop a sense of aversion to the body. So it is possible to have this incorrect attitude or way of thinking with respect to the body, particularly when you're new to this material. So if you're new to this material, you haven't thought it well enough or deep enough, something like that could happen.
아주 초직니 비기 차버도고 그래서 룰라야 차버도던 시온디 류기 미자미차 류기 예비차디 성단이 룰라야 차버도서디 송교레스 다 초직니 간주 미 류덴디 다긴 조주상이 류덴신 아니 계란기 다 라므름데 딘는알이야 간주 류디 톨아야지 아니 내가 야가 가르치도도 류디 톤에 아니 지 레그차 가리여바디 상무당바이나 아니 류디 짜침부임발이야 아니 지 차바지 무고사지임바 텐티지 통토야기 답시지 가시야당 요레스 디 통바이나 계란 류려야 지금 매장이란신 통바이나야 차바 마기바이나야 류디 짜침부 제진이 배제제도야지 연구요레스라.
So here in this topic, we'll look at the impure nature of the body in order to reduce the attachment that we have to the body. But then at the same time, when you look at the attitude that we have to the body from the viewpoint of the Lamrim, the cess of the path of enlightenment, one of the meditations is that we take up is a meditation on a precious human body with the 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. So we use this meditation on a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses in order to then appreciate this precious opportunity that we have with this body, so that we would not put it to waste, that we'll make the most out of it, that we extract the greatest meaning out of it. So we can actually bring these two together. We can reduce the attachment or put a stop to the attachment that we have to the body, but at the same time, appreciate the preciousness of this body, that we've attained a precious human body with freedoms and richnesses, so that we'll be motivated to make the most out of it.
네, 아주 류 무장의 시온디게 걔는 류 무장이 뭐 찍고 돌에 상다 뒤찍고 비 아니 검 대대바나 땡땡 샘나올이야 다 캔자식기야 용사라스 간지 제롬지 손 나올이야 당부 야친 되버 만드서 걔는 찬장 직년 찬장 직잔 아니 상로지 땅다 아니 샘래양 간도 매봐 마세 오늘 타네기다 아니 오늘 타네 레샤 삼삼기 로키야식 디키 야시야당 용거스 디용거스 간절로 먼저 초직을 된 대바이나 아니 만단사 아니 직 샘래양 간도 마부 용대야 되니 로다기야로 소바 리고르스 진짜 초 가설이야 계란기 아니 로춘주레 장토야 로 년토야 탑시 제거 뺀nen가레스.
If you take up a topic such as this and you meditate only on that, or if you think only of that, it is indeed possible for an attitude like that to arise. But as Lama Tsongkhapa pointed out in one of his teachings, at the beginning, I sought extensive study. So if we do make sure that we do not develop an impartial way of studying, which we only focus on one topic, but we make sure that we build a knowledge base to include many perspectives, many topics, many points, and so forth, our approach to a mental development would be wholesome. If we become biased or partial in seeking knowledge and then thinking about it, it is possible that in one way or another, a way of thinking will go astray. So Geshe says that you look still pretty young. So it's good to make sure that in your approach to study and mental development, that you try as much as possible then to look at many points, to build an understanding of the presentation from many different perspectives, including many topics. And if you do that, Geshe is confident that such cases or scenarios will not arise.
단징이 쉬어야 돼. 건다 안 지기라. 단징이 쉬어야 돼. 근데 뭐랑 깨지는 겨울음지 구zul이야. 잔네 깨지티야. 다 겨울음지야 구순이 여바디. 먼저 통투야지단 통마투야 이 여바디. 간이 싱그레스라는 계란기 도당나니기 쇼라야. 장바 야부시다. 오늘 탄의 샘띵게 드려 삼성기 아니 롭게 땐데라 그랬어. 또 니까를 잠아도나 되네 가고 싶자고 그랬어.
And Geshe is linking it up with Michelle's question. So how do we know that his honest has those two types of body? One that we see and one that we do not see. Geshe feels that this understanding of the possibility of these two bodies is understood from looking at the set of teachings of Sutra and Tantra. So currently it seems to be quite awkward, but then the more you study Sutra, including Tantra, then you open your mind to the possibility of, for example, his honest having those two sets of bodies to the point in which you think that, yeah, actually it makes a complete sense to me.
Thank you.
Okay, so there is another question here, but we'll take that question tomorrow. So let's leave it here for now. Do we do it in Tibetan or in English? In Chi. Due to this virtue, I quickly become a Guru Buddha and did all transmigrated beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that the reason not incline, but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You uphold the subduous moral way, who serves as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who mercifully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, protector of myself and others, your disciples. Please live long.